Stay tuned for the next edition of Zoom Landlord Tenant Talk Radio. The opening topic, California evictions. What does the sheriff actually do? Hello. Yes, another edition of Zoom Landlord Tenant Talk Radio coming at you every Saturday at 3 p.m. If you were listening live, the name of the song was No More Tears, also known as Enough is Enough. It was sung by Barbra Streisand and Donna Summers, and it was released in the year 1979. It was actually written by Paul Jabari and Bruce Robert, and these songwriters brought the song to both of these artists because they thought it was perfect for them. They actually brought them simultaneously, and actually they demoed it in Barbra Streisand's Malibu home, and she heard it and she loved it. Now, at the time that Barbara was listening to this song, she was making a concept album called Wet, where every track in that album had a water theme. However, this song just did not fit that mode of a water theme, and that's why she added right at the beginning of the song, "It's raining, it's pouring." And that's why that was added in. Okay, let's talk about the show format, and that is we have an opening topic, and then after the opening topic, those participants in the Zoom meeting room, I will call on you as long as you electronically raise your hand, and you can do that in the toolbar on the bottom of the Zoom application, or if you don't see it, go into a folder called Reactions, and it will be in there. So I take callers in the order that their hands were raised. So if you want to get in, you want to get your question answered, please electronically raise your hand right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, and if you're interested in landlord-tenant law and management, then I would suggest that you subscribe to the channel and hit that like button because we'll both benefit from that. And now, before I get into the opening topic, I wanted to share my screen again. And let's do that. Okay, so the name of the song was Enough is Enough. And what I'm referring to when it comes to that is the continuous legislation that negatively impacts property rights. And they just keep coming after us. So look at this beautiful refrigerator and stove. But the reason why I'm showing it is because our wonderful governor has passed AB Assembly Bill 628. Let's talk to you about what that means. That is a law that requires landlords to provide a working refrigerator and stove in residential units for the unit to be considered habitable. It applies to new, amended, or renewed leases starting as of January 1st, 2026. Now, it was always the choice of landlords to supply a refrigerator and or a stove. And that was just part of their methodology of allowing their apartments to be rented. Now, most landlords did supply it with a stove, but a lot of them certainly didn't supply it with a refrigerator. But again, that was just a bargaining chip, whether the tenant wanted it or not. Well, now our wonderful California state legislature, who can't figure out enough rules to destroy property rights, and of course, combined with our wonderful governor, has signed AB 628 into law. And now landlords are going to be forced as of January 1st, 2026, to shoulder additional expense of supplying a refrigerator and a stove to every single unit. Now, if the tenant doesn't want it, he has his own, then of course the landlord doesn't, of course, have to have the expense of it. But if the tenant at any time thereafter serves the landlord with a notice that he wants a refrigerator and or a stove, landlord's got 30 days to supply it. Again, this is just a trampling of our rights. We're already dealing with severe rent control, property taxes that are through the roof, insurance that are canceling us. And now, instead of trying to figure out a way to make insurance affordable in the state of California, or maybe our legislatures could figure out how to put water in fire hydrants, their job now, let's figure out another way that we can place harm on landlords. Okay. Now I want to talk about a little old business. Last week, a caller called in and suggested that the state of emergency for LA County was extended to January. That is not the case. The state of emergency, as far as rentals are concerned, ends the end of this month. Therefore, if you have a rental that is not subject to any rent control, you can raise the rent to whatever you like. For example, if it's a single family home, a townhouse, or a condominium, or something built within the last 15 years, you have the right to raise it to any level that you want, but you better wait until, if you're in LA County, of course, you better wait until November 1st before changing the rent. Now, the state of emergency does go to January of 2026, but it only applies to building materials, the sale of building materials. Okay, let's start now with our opening topic. And that is California eviction. What does the sheriff actually do? Well, first of all, you have to always have a judgment when you're going to have a tenant evicted. A lot of people think that, hey, I have a tenant who's creating a disturbance, or they haven't paid the rent in 3 months. All I got to do is go over and tell the sheriff to go pick them up and toss them out. Well, that's really a good law, assuming it exists. And it does exist in certain states, but certainly not in our tenant-friendly state of California. The protections for tenants in this state are unlimited. And of course, in order for a landlord to obtain a judgment, you have to first file an unlawful detainer, an eviction lawsuit, and you have to have it for cause. So what would that cause be? Well, of course, non-payment of rent, a substantial breach of the rental agreement, and potentially a nuisance value. Now, when they wrote the statute for unlawful detainers, the legislature at that time realized that every day the tenant remains in your property, you're losing money on a daily basis. That's not true if somebody hits you in a car accident, for example. Whatever your damages are, they don't increase the next day. They're still the same. But for landlords with a bad tenant who hasn't paid his rent or is doing something else, every day that the tenant sits there, the landlord is losing money on a daily basis. So they created this summary adjudication where unlawful detainers are basically fast tracked. But that's the way it used to be. It's still on the books as a summary adjudication, but you see now there are so many delay tactics that tenants can do and do. Also, you have to deal with all these local rules, which have so many pitfalls where if you make any procedural mistake, you're going to have to start the case all over again. So unlawful detainers, you can say it's a summary adjudication, but truthfully, it takes a long time. So how do you obtain a judgment? Because again, you can't start a tenant eviction unless you have a judgment. Well, first of all, you have to file a complaint with the court. That's called an unlawful detainer. The court's then going to issue a case number. Once you have that case number, then you need to serve your tenant with that lawsuit. A lot of times, tenants don't want to open up the door. Unlike a notice, which starts the lawsuit, if the tenant is not home or doesn't answer the door, you can just post one on the door and mail one. But in terms of a landlord proceeding forward with an unlawful detainer, you got to stick that lawsuit in the tenant's hand. And if they're not home or they're not opening up the door, it's going to, again, delay the proceedings. There is an alternative method of service, which we use all the time, called an order to post, that allows us to serve the tenant by posting it on the door, but it does require a court order. And once we get that court order, then we can serve the tenant immediately. Now, once the tenant is served, two things can happen. He either doesn't contest the proceedings, or if he does contest the proceedings, then we have to have a trial. But in either case, once that default period is over or we go to trial, then we will obtain a judgment. And I would like to show you what a judgment looks like. So here we go. That is California judgment. This was an actual judgment that we had in one of our cases. And of course, we redacted the plaintiffs' and defendants' information. But this is how this judgment looks. And that's what we're seeking when we go forward with that. Now, once we have a judgment, we got to do something else. We got to get something called a writ of possession. Right here, this writ of possession. Once you get a judgment, then the court clerk will allow us to get a writ of possession. Now, what is a writ of possession? Writ is synonymous with the word order. It orders somebody to do something. And in this case, it's ordering the sheriff to evict the tenant. So that's what we have here. We have the sheriff receiving this paperwork. Now, you also have to, in addition to submitting this writ to the sheriff, you also have to prepare sheriff instructions, which will go with the writ, and that is delivered to the sheriff's office. And of course, the sheriff's going to charge a fee, and of course, that fee is $145. I believe the writ fee to get a writ is $45. Now, once the sheriff receives that writ, they're supposed to go to the premise and post a warning notice. That warning notice is a 5-day notice to quit. And again, I'm going to share my screen here. I want you to take a look at this. This is what the sheriff will be posting on the tenant's door, a 5-day notice to quit. And of course, dealing with the sheriff's office since the pandemic has been a total piece of garbage in terms of the time period. They're taking now over 30 days from once they get this paperwork, over 30 days before they finally getting around to posting it. Lockouts now are taking over 2 months, 2 months to be performed. And this, of course, is a manufactured, policy-driven criteria by our county, Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. Before the pandemic, these evictions would take 2 weeks, 2 weeks. If in fact you delivered the paperwork to the sheriff in week 1, the sheriff in week 1 would post a 5-day notice, and they would schedule the lockout in week 2, 2 weeks. Since the pandemic, these are running 2 months behind. In fact, you have situations where the tenant the sheriff's office doesn't even log it into their system that they have the writ of possession for a full month. We used to deliver the writ of possession, hand deliver it to the sheriff's office. And of course, they don't give you a receipt. And then when you called them, they would tell you they don't have it. So now we started doing something in our office, and that is we FedEx every sheriff's writ and instructions to them. This way we can track it and I can see who signed for it so they can't claim that they didn't get it. It just becomes a laughable situation with that. So again, we have a manufactured delay by the County Board of Supervisors. Now look, they're running 2 months late, right? If I bring a notice in now, they're going to take 2 months at least to do the lockout. Well, why don't they just get through this backlog by putting more people on staff for a month or so, and now they won't have the backlog. So it's just another way of destroying our property rights, and this time it's by the County Board of Supervisors. This is not happening in Ventura. This is not happening in Orange County, San Bernardino, or Riverside. It's happening in LA County, and I'm imploring you to understand that this is the County Board of Supervisors that are intentionally slow walking these evictions. Okay, so you get a writ after all this trouble, you deliver it to the sheriff's office. Can the tenant do something now? And the answer is, oh my God, they can. They can file an ex parte motion. Ex parte is synonymous with the word emergency motion, and they can file these motions on hardship or a motion to set aside the judgment. It's 1 day's notice. They call our office. They're saying, we're giving you ex parte notice. And of course, we'll ask why. And they'll say, we're trying to set aside the judgment. Well, how could they set aside the judgment? Well, they might claim that they weren't served, even though they were. even though they were served maybe with an order to post, which is the court's blessing that it was served properly. Or they could say, this is a hardship. I've only screwed the landlords out of 8 months' rent, but it's a real hardship for me. So please, Mr. Judge, give me more time on the property. Now, this certainly can happen, especially when the tenant has a good reason why he didn't file an answer on time. And in certain cases, they can set aside the judgment. Okay, now, can the tenant do something else? Oh my God. It just doesn't stop in the state of California. You're right at the precipice of an eviction. You haven't gotten a judgment yet, but you're just so close to getting one. What does that pesky tenant do? They file bankruptcy. They file bankruptcy, and that, of course, stops the eviction. Now, my clients always say to me, look, Dennis, I know he filed bankruptcy. I don't care about the money. Let's just proceed forward with the eviction. Bankruptcy deals with money. I don't want the money. Let's go forward with the eviction. I want my place back. But what you don't understand is bankruptcy stops all state court proceedings. So we cannot proceed forward with this eviction unless we go into the bankruptcy court and we file something called a motion for relief from stay. That's basically a fancy way of saying that a federal court judge signs a piece of paper that says, okay, you can proceed forward with the eviction. So that's going to delay the case another 35 days. The good part of this law is that if the tenant decides to file bankruptcy after the judgment, it has no effect. But if he files it one day before the judgment, now you're going to waste another 35 days and the expense of going into the bankruptcy court. Now, what happens at the actual lockout date? Well, number one, the sheriff is going to arrive at the premises, and his job is to take the tenant and put him on the other side of the door, outside. And of course, the sheriff comes with his big sheriff moving truck to remove all of, no, I'm just kidding. Nobody touches the tenant's personal property. All the sheriff does is remove the tenant from the property. Now, what is the landlord's role in all of this? Well, the landlord must meet the sheriff with someone who's capable of changing the locks, like a locksmith. And I'm telling you, and I tell my clients, you need to arrive 10 minutes before the appointed time of that lockout date. And you need to be standing on the sidewalk in front of your building. Because you see, if the sheriff comes to your building at 7 o'clock in the morning to perform the lockout, he drives by slowly. If he doesn't see someone standing out in front, he doesn't even get out of his car. This is what we have to deal with. And then good luck on us getting the sheriff to come back. So that's another month or so, and you have to pay additional fees. So if you're told about a lockout date and time, you need to be standing on the sidewalk 10 minutes early. And of course, the sheriff can arrive up to 10 minutes late. When the sheriff leaves, they're going to give you some paperwork. Hang on to that paperwork because that paperwork is very valuable to you. If the tenant breaks back on in, you can call the local police department, not necessarily the sheriff, like the Los Angeles Police Department. And with that paper in your hand, you can have the tenant arrested as a trespasser. Now, when you go in, you want to make sure that you take pictures of all of his treasures that he left behind. The tenant has 15 days from the date of the lockout to retrieve his belongings. Now, if the sheriff does the lockout, you don't have to do any kind of paperwork. There is paperwork called abandonment of personal property, but that's only required if the sheriff doesn't do the lockout. So let's pretend the tenant left 5 days before the sheriff got there and there's a bunch of stuff left in the unit, then you need that form called abandonment of personal property. That form is on my website. You fill it out with the list of items and then you mail it in. You mail it to the tenant's last known address, and in 18 days, those personal properties are deemed abandoned. But if the sheriff does the lockout, you don't have to do any of that paperwork because that information is contained on the back of the writ that the sheriff served. They have 15 days to make an appointment with you to pick up their stuff. And when they make an appointment with you, it's not just to pick up a toothbrush or a hair comb. They got to pick up everything. So they got to come with a vehicle, like a truck. that will be big enough, because you're not going to have 2 or 3 or 4 appointments with these people who created so much havoc in your life. It's one appointment up to 8 hours to get their stuff. Now, if the tenant, here's some other delay tactics. If the tenant is disabled or handicapped, the sheriff might not do the eviction. Then the sheriff will have to reschedule and they'll have to get social services down there to assist the tenant. Obviously, if the tenant is in an iron lung machine, they're not going to sit there and just move it out to the sidewalk and then walk away from him. So if the tenant truly is disabled or handicapped, then your eviction case is going to be delayed. We always ask the clients if that's the case before we send it to the sheriff, so that the sheriff will know to have social services come. The other way that tenants can delay their evictions would be to have a pit bull in the unit, because in that case, the sheriff's not going to get involved with it. They're going to have to call animal control in that situation. Okay, we talked about the personal property left behind. Well, what do you do with it if they don't? Well, if the stuff is worth less than $700 combined, then that would be considered stuff that you can just throw out after the 15-day period, or if you're doing that abandonment form after the 18-day period. And you can just toss it away, take pictures. But if it's worth more than $700, then you're going to have to hold an auction. Oh my God. And I do want to show you that. Let's see here. You're going to have to do an auction. So we recommend a company by the name of Eyewitness Property Services. You can see their phone number on the bottom there, 818-538-6647. They're excellent. They'll hold the public auction for you. This is my referral. I don't have any interest in that company, but I've been working with them for many years. And by the way, if you want to do the lockout, this company will also coordinate the lockout, so you don't have to be there. They'll meet the sheriff and they'll take an inventory of what's in the property, and they'll change up to 2 keys. In any event, that's everything you always wanted to know about our topic of the day, which is California evictions, what the sheriff actually does. We're now going to open it up to questions and answers for those people who are in the Zoom meeting room. We know the rules, that this is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for legal advice. If you do want to talk to me, electronically raise your hand. Remember that this broadcast is for general questions only. If you have a case with me, you got to wait till Monday if you want to ask specific questions on your case. And also, if you're going to talk to me, please leave your camera on, because it makes much more enjoyment for our listeners and for myself as well. I get to pick apart what's behind you. And also, again, those people in YouTube, again, if you find this show interesting, then please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. We're now going to open it up, and our first caller is Dean. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hello. Thank you for taking my question. So I feel like my question is trivial, but I think I've learned that nothing's really trivial. So a tenant I talked to him. It's at a fourplex in Montebello, and he was kind of complaining that he has to put the trash cans out all the time. Nobody else helps him. And he asked me if I could take care of that. And I said, well, I live 22 miles away. If I lived around the corner, I would probably do it. Do I have, and then I thought, well, maybe one direction, either putting out or bringing back in, the gardener can do it because it coincides with the day that the gardener's there, that I pay. But can I just say, well, deal with it yourself? You're the one that lives there. And if you need other people, ask the other tenants if they can help you.
I think that's fine. Did you say the tenant is handicapped?
No, he's not. He's
Oh, well,
able-bodied.
then you know what? He has to take out his own garbage, and he has to clean
Well, they're
his own apartment as well.
Well, they're okay. So maybe they don't have their own garbage cans. They're kind of like communal. So he said that he ends up having to put like
Oh,
all four
okay. Then
barrels out.
I misunderstood your question. If it's a communal garbage can, it's your responsibility, my friend.
Well, it's not a big bin. It's the small ones.
I don't care if everybody uses that same trash bin, it's not just his, then you
Okay.
as the landlord, that's part of your maintenance to get that in. So you're going to need to get your gardener to do it, and maybe you can help by getting a neighbor or something to do it on a pay basis or something, but that's your responsibility.
Yeah, I think he wants to, I think he's kind of fishing for getting paid for it, and I don't want to do that. But it could a solution be to get four black trash cans and four blue trash cans?
Yes, I don't know. Cities have specific rules with regard to that, but yes, if you did that, then that's their responsibility. But that
And
would be
each
crazy
person could
to,
have their own.
yeah, but that would be
Okay, well,
crazy to
thank you.
have that. Anyway, thank you very much. We're moving on to Dave G. How are you?
I'm good, Dennis. Thanks. I'll probably end up calling you, I think, on Monday about this. Anyway, it's City of LA non-RSO. And about 5 years ago, I built a new ADU. The tenant moved in, and there was no phone jack up there. I called AT&T. They said it probably cost $150. So I emailed the tenant. I said, go ahead, make an appointment. I'll pay for any installation costs. Well, they ended up never doing it. And I just thought, well, they're using their cell phones. That's fine. Then they complained about lack of internet. And I said, tell you what, instead of doing the phone, I'll pay for installation of the satellite that was available. And they said, okay, but then they never followed through on that. So now 5 years later, there's no phone jacks up there and there's no internet or anything. They just never did it. So the tenant up there right now is late on rent. The 3-day notice is coming due on Wednesday. His response to the 3-day notice was a claim for damages from lack of habitability because there's no phone jack. And he basically wants the next 6 months of rent free. $16,000 he wants because there's no phone jack. So I don't know how to respond to this guy.
Well, I know how to respond to it. First of all, believe it or not, in the civil code, it does require that there's one working phone jack in an apartment unit. Now, we all know based on our current lifestyle, I don't know any kid that has a landline anymore. Only old people like us have landlines,
That's why I
but
didn't worry about it.
right?
Yeah. And
So
he cites that code in there. He's got some legal. I
yeah,
think
but
he's
here's
going to
what he
help.
doesn't cite. He doesn't cite the fact that you said, yes, go call the phone company and I'm willing to pay for it. How about
Exactly.
that? He chose not to have it in. So it's clear that he was given the opportunity and given the expense. So the reason why there's no working phone jack is because of him. So for him to ask for a decrease in rent, he's out of his mind. With regard to the internet, there is no obligation to put in internet, but I'm just curious, why did you say satellite? Wouldn't they run like cable?
I'm kind of in this funny area of Shadow Hills. I know you know where that is. I'm up in
Mhm.
the hills a bit. And so there's very limited services available. I'm up a private road. And so like AT&T phone jack doesn't have DSL, right? The cable company won't install a new line to their place. So the only solution would have been the satellite dish.
It's called Starlink. I actually have one. I have a one that's portable that I can take when I go places if I'm desperate for the internet.
That'd be really cool, yeah. But
Yeah,
I mean,
and yeah, but you'd be spending they're actually great, especially the ones that are home situated there, but it's about 150 bucks a month. But of course, that cost would be on the tenant side. I think the installation is really nothing, and it's about I think it's around $300 for the home one. So, but again, you have no obligation to do that. You had an obligation to put in a working phone jack, and
should I do that on Monday?
yeah, just I would just do it. Say we asked you, and I would put it in writing to him. We told you months ago. Tell him the date that you did it. That we were going to make the appointment and do it, and I would reimburse you for that. You chose not to, but now that you're making an issue of it, notwithstanding the fact that you chose not to have it, I'm putting it in, and that's what I would do.
So if on the end of the day, Wednesday, he hasn't paid rent in full, just proceed with the eviction.
Serve with a 3-day notice, but do a setup letter saying, we told you to put one in at our expense. You chose not to.
Okay, I already gave them the 3-day notice.
That's fine. Just do the letter to them with regard to that issue. Anyway, thank you very much. I see another one here that says iPhone. If you want to unmute yourself. Listed as, there you go.
Hi, Dennis. How are you today?
I am good, thank you.
I have a complicated situation. I know that you can help me with it. But I have a non-RSO building in the city of Los Angeles where I had this tenant on a 12-month lease, and he had a concession for about $839 off for 12 months. That has expired or whatever. We did not sign a new lease. It went over into like a month-to-month tenancy or whatever.
Okay.
The lease expired last month, so the tenant did not pay the rent for this month. Am I able to give the tenant the 3-day notice for the full market value, or am I only allowed to give him the what he was paying originally?
Well,
Before the lease.
I would have to see the terms of the contract. Was he getting this discount in the 13th month or the 12th month?
It ended in the 12th month. I did not. In the contract didn't say what would happen after 12 months, but it just said that it was going to be amortized over a 12-month period.
Okay, so
But
was it amortized over a 12-month period?
It was, yes. And the
Okay, so
12th month
then
was
he's got
last
his
month.
discount. So the 13th month, he owes the full amount of rent. By the way, how much is the rent per month?
$4,025.
Okay, so you're well above the thresholds. Yes, serve that 3-day notice and let's proceed forward with an eviction.
Yeah, because I was wondering, because I've been reading, like, do I need to serve like a rent increase since he went into a month-to-month?
Well,
lease?
at this point, there's no reason to serve a rent increase because he's not paying the rent. So let's first serve a 3-day
Okay.
notice. Let's see if he pays. If he pays it, then I would serve a rent increase. You could go up to, actually, it's unlimited, but do this as of November 1st.
But if he doesn't pay, what should I do with the 3-day notice?
It's very simple. You take this number down, 1-800-77-EVICT, and you call my office.
Okay, I'll try to call you on Monday. You said you accept calls between a certain time, or I just
do.
call the office and make an appointment, I guess.
No, we do them right over the phone. If you call between 7 to 8 a.m., I will answer if you hit my extension 1001, but that's only between 7 to 8. If you use that extension outside of those hours, I won't answer, and then you just have to wait till 9 o'clock. Anyway, thank you very much. Moving on to Mr. Al. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about paragraph 9 of your lease.
Paragraph 9 of my lease.
Yeah, it says tenant shall be responsible for the clean or repair to any plumbing fixture where there is stoppage, has occurred.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. Generally speaking, while we put that in to kind of protect ourselves, it generally means if the tenant has put something unnatural down the drain, and hair is natural. But if you see a child's toy or a baseball bat, something to that effect, then you can hold the tenant responsible for that.
They're cutting their hair.
Okay, but like if they're cutting their hair, like in the bathtub?
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, unless you can prove that it's a whole head of hair, hair does go down a drain. So you might want to install, and we think we said this on the last show, those drains that kind of collect hair so it doesn't go down and you won't be charged with that expense.
Yeah, I did, but I also I went over there when the plumber was there and I took a picture of his snake and there was a whole big gob of hair.
Well, that could have accumulated, so he'll say, over years, you know?
But this is like the 4th time in 5 years at the same time.
Yeah. I don't see you holding him liable for that. Anyway, thank you very much. An old friend coming on next, Jim Polina.
Hey, Dennis. Good to see you again. How you doing?
I'm good. You're sporting a mustache, huh?
Something new and different. Right. So 2 questions. One is the 601 letter of agency for trespassers. In your experience, just how effective is that in getting out squatters?
I actually haven't heard anybody who used it. So, but I
Really?
would imagine that the law is clear that if, and it's in the state of California, if you have one of those notices of trespass filed with the local police department and you have no trespassing signs up there, you can call the local police department. It's on file that I'm the owner and this place is vacant. So I think it would be effective.
Okay. Second question.
However, before we move to the second question, just to let you know, I have a client in Pasadena who had a lockout with the LA County Sheriff. The tenants broke back in. Pasadena police wouldn't honor the lockout. So she had to go to the sheriff's office, the Pasadena police office many, many times, start going up the ranks. They finally tossed them out. The tenants broke back in, and the Pasadena police are still not wanting to do it again. It's insane. They don't even want to follow the law. Anyway, let's move on to your second question.
That's amazing. Sad story. Okay. This is kind of my do-it-yourself eviction process. This is like a game plan. I want to pass over you and see if it makes sense or there's any weak holes in it. So let's say I have a tenant not paying rent and I negotiated a cash for keys and I fill out the stipulated judgment and give it to the court and the judge stamps it. So now I have the judgment in hand.
Let me slow you down. Let me slow you down. Did you already have a lawsuit on file before the
Yes.
tenant signed it?
Well, the unlawful detainer.
You had filed the unlawful detainer. After the
Yes.
unlawful detainer was filed, he signed the stipulated judgment.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Go ahead.
Okay. So in the agreement, I agree to pay X amount of money, and it's going to be held in a separate escrow account based on him moving out. And I would pay for a moving van to move all his possessions into a mini storage, and I would pay for the mini storage. So now he's out completely. And once he's out, escrow has a policy where both parties have to sign a release of any money in escrow. Well, my theory is it's not fair that I've lost all this rent. And now I'm paying cash for keys. So I'm not going to sign it. And I'm going to take him to small claims court and claim my lost rent against the credit of the cash for keys. Is that full of holes?
No, my friend, you're going against the terms of the agreement that you signed. Of course, we had a rental agreement which said what their responsibilities were, but now you have it where you've entered into a new agreement. These are the terms, and now you're going back on them. You'd be in breach of contract, Jim.
Well, just like the tenant, I'm not paying rent.
Yes, but then you shouldn't have entered into a cash for keys agreement. You should have just gone forward with the eviction, got a judgment for eviction, and got a judgment for the amount of rent owed. But you're trying to eat your cake too.
Help me figure this out. I mean, I want to do the stipulated agreement and that I can still collect lost rent.
Well, then you put it in the stipulated agreement. But if it's not in the stipulated agreement, you're out of luck. Anyway, thank you very much. We're moving on to Isabel. How are you? Isabel?
Yes, hi. Thank you.
Hey there.
Hi. Well, it's a bunch of questions actually.
Well,
I
we'll give you two.
Two? Okay, there's gonna be more than that.
Make them important. We've got other people.
Okay, I have a tenant and she wants her son who lost his job to move in. So we run this application like everybody else, and his credit is super low. Landlords do not take anybody below 700, but because she's a good tenant, they are thinking of giving her this opportunity to have her son there. So AOA told me that I could use the co-signer agreement for her to sign. And
why would she need to sign a co-signer? Doesn't she live there too?
She lives there, but because he has no job. And
okay, you don't have a co-signer. A co-signer agreement is for someone who's not living in the unit, who's going to guarantee that the rent is paid if the tenant doesn't. But a tenant doesn't. This is your tenant. A tenant doesn't sign a co-signer agreement. So if you want to let the son in, just have him come in as an occupant only, not as a tenant. And this way, if she moves out, we'll be able to evict him. And if rent isn't paid, she's ultimately responsible. That's the way I would do it.
So occupant only, but how do I do that? I put in the lease
Just
because
do an addendum to the lease that states
like
that this person is an occupant, not a tenant.
so where the addendum to between cottage the place, the company, hearing landlord and agents, and we put his name there and
You
resident.
just put just like you would have a child wouldn't sign a contract if it was 2 years old, but you would list him as an occupant, and that's all you're doing. You're listing
Okay.
this person. This way, if she decides to move out, and maybe that's her ultimate plan, then you can immediately start an eviction against him because he's not a proper tenant. Anyway, thank you very much. We're moving on to Suzette. How are you? Suzette, asking you to unmute yourself. Okay, Suzette, we tried. We're moving on to Sonia. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Oh, no, I see Suzette. Suzette just came in. Okay, say hello.
You know, you know, I'm always driving. I'm on my way home from work.
Okay,
Okay, Dennis, I have questions today. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hello?
My love, I
Okay.
hear you.
First, the first question. Okay, the first question is the city of Long Beach, that threshold, the apartment bedroom thresholds, does that apply there?
No, the threshold and before you can serve a 3-day notice only applies to unincorporated areas of LA County and the city of Los Angeles only.
Okay, perfect. And then the second question is, I have a tenant in the LA city. He's been there for a long, long time, like maybe 20 years. He never filled out, or we don't have a lease agreement with him. If I were to use your lease agreement and sign it, he's not going to give me security deposit. I don't believe he's ever given
You're kind of
security
breaking
deposit.
up, but I'm almost hearing your question. If he doesn't have a rental agreement, sure, you could prepare mine that's on my website at evict123.com, and you hand it to him and tell him you've got 7 days to return it to me. But the truth of the matter is, your tenant has no obligation to sign that rental agreement. Let's move on now back to Sonia. I'm going to ask you again to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, Dennis.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you. I'll try and make these quick. One quick question is that rentals registration certificate that we have to do every year, even for a single family residence, property in the city of Los Angeles. Does that have to be posted along with those other, right to counsel and renters protection thing?
No, those are just, the registration certificate is just mailed to your tenant. It does not have to be posted.
Okay, great. And the other question I have is, a friend of mine, she has a fourplex in Glendale, but very low rents. She's considering selling it, but if she increases the rent now, then sells it, will that new buyer be able to increase the rent as well, or do they have to wait until that year?
Well, you're under the Glendale rent control statute since you're more than 3 units or 3 units or more. So he would have to wait another year before increasing the rent.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Let's move on to Arlene. How are you?
Hi, Dennis. I just wanted to say thank you so much for clarifying that question that I had from last week. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was dealing with when the state of emergency is over. So I went and I took a look at that. And you're right, it does extend to January, but only for the sale of building parts, not for rent increases. So you guys out there, if you've got property that is not subject to any rent control statute, you are free to raise your rents to market level. If you're curious, I always tell people to go to a website called rentometer.com, the R-E-N-T, the letter O, meter.com. Put in your address. You'll know exactly what the average rents are for that type of a unit and the location of your unit.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. I have a 30-year birthday party to go to as soon as this broadcast is over. Terry W., How are you?
You're muted.
Very good, very good. Phil Dunn told us to give you a call, and you made a client out of us. So Phil says hi. Anyway, my wife is here. We have some single family homes in San Bernardino County, and she has a question or two about the process.
We are in the middle of an eviction with you guys, and in the process of trying to get
remember, we don't talk about specific cases, so we just ask a general question.
Right.
General.
My first general question is with regards to the expedited 5 days to respond. Is that business days or 5 days?
Okay, first of all, the state legislature changed it as of January 1st of 2025 to 10 business days.
Excellent. That's going to help a lot.
Right.
Okay.
It just steals money from landlords. That's all. It just makes the case go another 8 days longer. So another theft of property rights by extending the time upon which a tenant can answer the lawsuit.
Okay. Yeah, I was only referring to the paperwork we received, and it alarmed us. Second one is the fact that we've already had an answer from the tenant, denials, of course. We realize that the expectation is that not all of them will be true, and in this case, quite a few of them are not. How do I saw no specific means of addressing those unless we are able to do that within the answers that they've asked for and of admissions.
Again, we're getting a little bit too much into specifics here. I really suggest that you call the office and I'll be happy to talk to you. But in general, when every time you're suing a tenant for non-payment of rent, every single case where the tenant files an answer, they claim that the premises are uninhabitable. As a general rule, I tell my clients if they're saying things are wrong with the premises, serve a 24-hour notice and go on in and check it out to see if in fact those items are need attention, and if they do, of course, then repair them immediately. But most of the time you'll go in there and you'll see that their claims are totally fabricated. So serve a 24-hour notice and go on in. We have that same person who I quoted in my opening topic. He will also go in there and do a evaluation of your property, depending on where your property is located. Anyway, thank you very much. Moving on to, and again, you can call me at the office. I'm going to ask the next person, how do you think the Lakers are going to do, Harold?
They better do good this year. They better do good. I don't know who we got that's new, that's anything, but I think LeBron really wants it this year. So I think we might get into the championship.
Well, guess what?
What?
Tomorrow, I get to go to a Laker game.
Oh my God.
Season. So I'm ready.
Keep me on the list in case all these people aren't able to make it.
I will keep you on the list.
Hey, but real quick, Generous Dennis has a AI feature on his website that is extremely awesome. If you got 8 million questions to ask, you don't want to harass them. I just want to put the plug with that. And then back to a question that was earlier about, the shower plug. What if the tenant just keeps taking the plug off and then you can't find it? Is there a time when you can actually evict him based on that, or you can never?
I wouldn't say a victim, but I think the tenant would be liable for, the plumbing repair in that situation. Okay. By the way, you were talking about the AI feature.
Yeah.
If you go to my website, everybody, it's evict123.com, and you go up to the top and it says, ask a question, instant answers. And I have created that there where I have fed it all the information on landlord-tenant law. So you get some pretty decent answers. Is it 100% accurate? No. But in most cases, it really gives you some good answers. And this weekend, updating it, it's even going to be better.
All right, Dennis.
All right. Anyway, thank you very much, Harold. Moving on to my New York friend, who I will be seeing in February when I see the Knicks play the Lakers.
And you lose, right?
No, we're going to win. No question.
Hi, Dennis. I have a question about the incomprehensible explanation of what happened with the HUD removal of the HUD guidance on the emotional support animals. Have you been following that?
I have not. Did HUD say you can't have an emotional support animal?
Well, what I don't understand is AAOA had a segment on it a couple days ago, and I listened to it, and it's the first time I came away not really understanding whether we could do anything.
Well, under
Yeah,
the federal rules, I don't really care what the federal rules are because California rules are clear that if it's an emotional support animal, that you have to allow it in if they have the proper documentation.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. It's about a 300 and a landlord's asking for a $350 one-time fee for, issues created by emotional support animals. And I
You can't do that. That would be a
can't do that in
violation
California,
of,
right?
yeah, you can't, I think that's even federal. You can't do that. I mean, I didn't listen to that lecture that you were listening to, but that would be a violation of, fair housing and the California Disability and Federal Disability Act.
Well,
If the animal is allowed to be there because you have a disability, you can't charge the tenant money to have that animal there.
Well, the case was actually about whether the tenant made the case that she needed an emotional support animal because she started out with this landlord in another apartment with the dog, not claiming it was an emotional support animal. But the second part of this is what concerned me, was there was mention in it of animal liability insurance. Is there such a thing in general?
You could possibly get it, but I can't see that you're putting any kind of an onerous on the tenant to buy anything or to pay anything because that's going to be against the Disability Act.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to JTK. How are you?
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my question, Dan. I had a amendment I did. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
For the trash, I guess there are new trash fees. I have 2 duplexes in the RSO Los Angeles area for trash. So I did the 30-day notice to have them pay for the trash. Is that a
Let me stop you here. This is RSO property?
Yes.
Okay, so if it's under RSO, you can't charge them anything else other than a rent increase.
Well,
now you could do that on new tenants coming in,
Okay.
but not on existing tenants.
Okay, so the trash is they're paying the trash already on the water and power, from what I understand. But I just wanted to make
Well, they're
it
paying
clear.
sewage on
Yeah,
if they're, but you wouldn't have if are there multiple units on one property?
It's a duplex, 2 on.
Okay, so then you only have one water meter, so that's always going to be on the responsibility of the landlord, unless when the tenants moved in, you said, "Hey, this is it. You guys are going to split this."
Right, okay. Because in San Diego, they're putting it on the real estate tax bills, and so if they, I got you. So I can't do 30-day notice because that would be an increase, even though they're paying.
It's considered an increase. If they're putting more money out of their pocket, it's an increase.
I got
Let me
you.
ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is that a body of water behind you?
Yes, it is.
What is it? What am I looking at?
It's the Pacific Ocean.
Okay. Well, you got a nice view, my friend.
Thank you. So the
All
difference
right,
between your case, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say one day I'll get rich and famous like you with that kind of a view.
So the difference between your lease and AOA,
they're very similar. I think mine's a little bit more dicey, but they're very similar, and I helped write the AOA lease. So anyway, thank you very much. Moving on to Eddie Sandoval. How are you?
I'm doing good, Dennis. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm a property manager. I manage a 10-unit property in Moreno Valley, California. And I was watching the news. This big investor, Mike Najjar, he's being sued by the state for not accepting Section 8. I'm not going to make it about him, but I noticed a trend. Many landlords don't want to rent to Section 8. Why is that?
Well, first of all, under the laws for California, you have to rent to Section 8. And you can't use poor credit as a reason to reject them. So the landlords, if you're out there and someone calls you up on the phone for your vacancy and says, "Hey, do you take Section 8?" You better say yes, or you're going to get sued for discrimination. Why don't landlords like Section 8? Well, so some of my clients love it, and it's a great business opportunity for them. Most of my clients dislike it for the following reasons. Number one, they don't need to have government in their pocket. It's a relationship between a landlord and a tenant. Why does government have to stick their nose into that relationship? Also, the Section 8 has yearly inspections. If the inspection fails, then the landlord's portion of the rent is cut off. That can be troublesome when, if it's the tenant who's not allowing the inspector to come in, it falls on the head of the landlord that he's not going to get paid. Also, rent increases. Even if you were in a jurisdiction which will allow you an 8% rent increase or a 3% rent increase, you can't get a rent increase. All rent increases have to be approved by Section 8. If they don't approve it, you don't get a increase. And last but not least, why I think it's a poor reason to have Section 8, even though the law requires it. If you have one tenant in your building that is a Section 8 tenant, one tenant, if another tenant doesn't pay you the rent, you get out your handy dandy 3-day notice to pay rent or quit. If you serve that on this other tenant, you've lost the case, because under the rules, if you have one tenant in your building, you have to serve a 3-day notice to pay or 30-day notice to quit. It's a hybrid notice, which means that that tenant's going to get an extra 30 days on the property only because you have one Section 8 tenant. So that's my reasoning, and hopefully you liked it. Moving on to David Donahue. How are you?
Doing good, really good, Dennis. Real quickly, I'm the president of a political action committee in the city of Burbank, and we're looking at suing the city and also possibly the Federal Fair Practices, the FPPC, because they are preventing Councilmember Chris Rosati from deliberating about tenant protections and rent control. Do you know of anybody that would be an attorney that is familiar with the FPPC and tenant protection rent control issues?
I would contact either the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. They have attorneys on staff that do that, and they file lawsuits. Also, I would contact the Apartment Association, the Apartment Owners Association. They have a PAC, a political action committee, and they certainly can refer you. I know the city of Burbank, where my office is located, has been getting together and trying to start rent control. I'm sure you've heard that. And of course, that would be
We've been fighting that.
disastrous.
Yeah, we're actively fighting it. We've been raising money. We've been pretty successful at it. So now we feel the only way to really get some attention is to file a lawsuit, because there is they're all very intent to put some high level of rent control and rent restrictions in the city of Burbank.
You got it. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to go back as the last call. Let's see here. Last call to Eddie Sandoval. I guess I cut you off.
Oh yes, Dennis. It was a two-part question. One is going about that Section 8. At what point, I know there's a loophole, right, to deny Section 8. Like, let's say, I think something about it's a month. They require a 1-year lease.
Well, I know for my properties, I only rent out month to month.
Yeah.
And that's what I do for my properties. And if you do that for yours, I'm under the understanding that Section 8 will not accept a lease that's month to month. But again, you'd have to check that with Section 8. But I just know that it's for my purposes, the reason why I like to rent month to month is because under the statewide rent control, if the tenant's been there less than 1 year, you don't need cause to evict. Also, for example, if you're under the just cause ordinance for the city of Los Angeles, if the tenant's been there less than 6 months, you don't need cause to evict. So those are proper reasons. Now, if it also works out the fact that you don't have to, that it doesn't meet Section 8 rules, well, then so be it. But again, I have good reasons why I only rent out even before Section 8 was foisted upon us, why it's good to only rent month to month.
So would a good point to tell them that you only do month to month be at the rental criteria, or would it be at
I would, well, if that's
or-
what your criteria
Yeah.
is, then
Yeah.
I would put it into your rental criteria that we just rent month to month. And there's good
Yeah.
reasons only to rent month to month. Also,
Yeah.
the last thing I'm going to
Aside
say
from-
before we end this is that, if you're on a 1-year lease and the tenant leaves after 5 months, most landlords aren't going to chase the guy. So what's the point? So you might as well have more protection with a month to month. Anyway, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I got to take a little drive over to Malibu to this 30-year birthday party, my son's girlfriend. And so I want to thank everybody for coming out. We'll be doing this next week for Zoom Landlord Tenant Talk Radio. And you guys in YouTube land, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.